My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Okay, finally, we have a new 3-hand Casio Edifice on the channel. I've been waiting a while for this because I'm excited to do both a review of this watch, as well as bring back the Casio Edifice Showdown, where we compare two Casio Edifice watches, and the loser gets sold, and the winner remains as the champion. This will be episode 4 of that series. But before we get to this review, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the content of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So for price and availability, this watch is kind of tricky to find in the US at the time of this recording. I was able to order it from overseas, but I think it will become available from more vendors in the US over time. The MSRP is $139. The case is 42mm in diameter, 49.5mm lug to lug. It's only 11mm thick, but then it does have a 21mm lug with opening. More on that choice later. Sized up for my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it weighs in at 110 grams. I've noticed the finishing on this case is not as nice as some of the previous models. The top is circular brushing, and the sides are high polish, but gone is the high polished chamfered edge that is found on the EFV-140D and a few others in the Casio Edifice lineup. The case is quite flat, so you will notice the almost 50mm lug to lug. However, due to how thin the watch is, it does wear quite snug and comfortable on my wrist. The bezel is high polish, and you will find the familiar crown guards that are on many of the Casio Edifice 3-hand models. Now, when the EFV-100D came out, it came in a 40mm and 36mm size. For this model, I'm not sure if they're making a smaller version, but I would love to see a 40mm version of this watch. So Casio really gave with one hand and took with the other in regards to this bracelet. The 3-link style is all brushed, which I much prefer to the versions with high polished center links. However, it is a very frustrating 21mm in size. This is going to make finding replacement straps quite tricky. So you're going to want to keep that in mind if you think you're not going to like this bracelet. Now the bracelet is the typical one you usually get on these Edifice models, hollow end links that have a touch of play, but you do get nice articulation across the back of the watch and decent articulation between the links. The bracelet does taper down to 18mm at the clasp, which is a double push to plant with a pressed scissor. It is also double signed with Edifice and the Edifice logo, and features 4 micro positions, so you should be able to get a good fit on the bracelet. Finally, sizing is accomplished with standard split pins. Overall, the bracelet is comfortable and serviceable, but it definitely has a budget feel to it. The case back is just a snap-in style, but this watch is rated to 100 meters of water resistance. The Edifice logo, Edifice, and Casio are stamped into the back along with some other information. This is a very plain but functional case back, which is fine for this watch. This watch is powered by the Casio Module 5507, which is the same movement used in many of the other 3-hand Casio Edifice models. This is a quartz movement with a stated accuracy of plus or minus 20 seconds a month, a 3-year battery life, and a quick set date. Keep in mind the ticking on these is not silent, but it's also not deafening. However, you might be able to hear it if you sleep with it on your bedside table, for example. The 5mm push-pull crown is signed with the Casio Edifice logo. It's quite small to grab from between the crown guards, but being a quartz watch, you will not have to adjust it very often. The EFV-100D utilized a screw-down crown, but that seems pretty unique to that watch, as most of the other Edifice models seem to just feature push-pull crowns. The mineral crystal is flat and flush to the bezel. There are a few Casio Edifice models that use sapphire crystals at this price point, but unfortunately this is not one of them. Between the mineral crystal and the high polished bezel, this one's probably going to scratch up pretty easily, so keep that in mind depending on the conditions that you wear your watches in. The dial on this watch is really well executed. The similarity to the Omega Aquaterra is undeniable, including the horizontal lines etched into the dial. There's also actually a sunburst effect to the dial as well, making the colors range from black to dark gray. Between these two details, the dial is very visually interesting and plays with light really well. The chapter ring designates 60, 50, 30, and 45 with Arabic numerals, with squares for the remaining hour positions. At the edge of the dial, there are small dashes for each of the minutes that are further subdivided by even smaller dashes. At 12, there is the triple branding that you usually find on the Casio Edifice models, which includes the Edifice logo, Edifice, and Casio. I think they could easily drop 2 of these, as it's a lot of text at the top of the dial there. The date window resides at 3 and has a very small frame. At 6, you can barely make out the water resistance 100 meters, as it's written in dark gray against the black dial. The indices here are also super well executed, especially at this price point. They're triangular with white in the center, and then they facet down from the sides, and those edges catch light extremely well. Again, both the indices and the handset are very reminiscent to the Omega Aquaterra. Speaking of those hands, the hour and minute hands are nicely gabled and will catch light on one side or the other. The minute hand is quite long, reaching almost to the dashes at the edge of the dial. The hour hand has an arrow at the end, but the hand is a bit more refined than on some of the other Edifice models and is sleeker. I think I prefer the more square hands on the EFV-140D, for example, but the handset is handsome and it's very easy to tell the time with the white hands against the black dial. Then the second hand is all silver and does have an arrow at the end. Now, where they usually splash the tip of the second hand in red, yellow, or orange, they actually kept this one completely monochromatic. The lume on Casio Edifice models is always a weak point. Here, the lume is not very strong, it's not very bright, and they only lume the hands, so in the absence of a reference point, it's going to be pretty difficult to tell what time it is if you don't have much light. I'm not even really going to put this up against another watch. The lume is basically terrible, so if you want to watch with good lume, this is not going to be it. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, a long 49.5mm lug to lug here, but the thinness does help overall, and you can see it wears quite flat and snug to my wrist. Despite being 42mm in diameter, I don't think this watch wears overly large. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, these three-hand Casio Edifice models are really great watches. They're a little bit dressy and a little bit sporty, so they're going to suit many different situations. The dial, hands, and indices are really well executed for this price point, and the watch is extremely legible. Also, you have 100 meters of water resistance, which means you don't have to be too afraid to get this one wet. As for the cons, I'm really disappointed in the 21mm lug width. It's going to drastically reduce your number of strap options, which is a shame on this one. Due to the fact that they didn't add a splash of color on the second hand or on the dial, such as orange or red, I think this watch will pair extremely well with any color you would choose. So not making a 20mm lug width here is a huge oversight. Also, I'd love to see this watch released in multiple sizes to accommodate a wider range of preferences and wrist sizes. As for comparables, look no further than the Casio Edifice line. I think the entire Casio Edifice line, but especially the three-handers, offer a lot of value. My Casio EFV-140D is a regular wear in my rotation and often makes me question the entire hobby. You can still pick one of those up at the time of this recording for around $75. If you want something similar with a sapphire crystal, check out the EFR-S108D, which you can pick up around $110. I think the price on this particular watch will settle below $100, and at that price you're getting a great watch. It also comes in a few other cool colorways such as blue and green. Just make sure you're going to want to keep it on the bracelet. I think if you want to switch to a strap, you might check out one of the other models with a 20mm lug width. I've reviewed quite a few Casio Edifice models on my channel, so feel free to check out some of my other videos. There are tons of options in this range, and it's honestly one of my favorite range of watches. So there you guys have it, the Casio EFV-140D. What do you guys think about this watch? Let me know in the comments below, and keep a lookout for Casio Edifice Showdown 4 in the next couple weeks, where we will pit this watch against the champion, the EFV-100D. Alright, as always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.